As we can see that the Nasdaq is opened up, and we can see that today we've had a little bit of a sell-off today. Now, as a general rule, this is not good news for the rest of the day. Okay, so we have a horizontal level right there. So we have a double bottom, a touch there, and then the next day completely changed. It completely went up. Now the problem with this is that the futures market there's more sellers than buyers in the futures market, which means then that it looks like we're going to have a little bit of a sell-off today. And will it come back down? Will it come back down to this floor? How do you get on, Ricky? Will it come back down to this floor, or will it break this level? Will it come back down into sort of this area? Now, looking at what's going on, are we more stable or less stable than we were when we sort of went into the first lockdown? We're much more stable. We're in much better stead. We can work from home. All this hasn't changed. So the markets are in a much better position they are now. But the problem is that scared money does strange things. So once this new variant comes out and we're now starting to go into lockdowns, restrictions have now got much tighter again, all of a sudden people have started to panic a little bit. You have the airline stocks, their stocks have had a massive drop, as we've had a pretty big movement across the market. Yes, yesterday actually returned that, but it looks like today we'll have a little bit of a sell-off again. So I fully expect today to have a little bit of a sell-off. But will it break this low or not? I don't know. Will it come back to here? I actually think this phase 2 will come back to at least here. Okay. If we look at the cyclicity of the market, we're in this phase 1. We had a small pullback, went on again. We're expecting a pullback. We're due a pullback. So I would expect it to come back into this area. Now, can I guarantee it? No, but I would expect it to come back somewhere around there. That would be the natural progression for the market. It would be something that we were expecting. And then with a bit of coronavirus added on top of it there, I would expect sort of that to happen. Now, again, like I say, can I guarantee that? No, but I do expect that to come back down into somewhere into that area. Now, will it drop further? It may do, and it's one of these things that it's happening in the market at the minute. Now, we've seen this drop across the board. So if we look at the likes of the S&P, now we've actually had a much bigger sell-off today on the S&P, which tells me that this sell-off is more across the board, and tech seems to be still all right. Tech seems to be holding on the pre-market at the moment, but the other industries are starting to drop. Okay, so we can see that we've had a much bigger sell-off. And do I expect today to make a lower low? Absolutely. Do I expect the S&P to hold at this level? Probably not. I expect it to potentially go down a little bit lower. We might even see this drop down into that area there. That may be a nicer area for us to actually see that dropping down into. So we will sort of see some sort of movement to the downside. I think over the next 2 or 3 days. Like I think it's more inevitable than pessimistic. I just think the market is going to continue dropping, and also we have the likes of this one as well, the Dow. So the Dow has actually made a lower low today. So that's also quite interesting that it's already made a lower low. So if we drop a level in here, so if we drop a level in there and actually just sort of move this. Okay, so there is an area there, but the problem with this is that there's a couple of levels. There's a couple of levels through this area. We have one there, absolutely, but we also have one a little bit lower as well. Okay, so which one of these do we expect it to come down to? and it may not come down to any of them. But there is an absolute valid level as well. And we will see what happens. So I expect this to probably come back down into this area. And if it comes back down into this area, then we actually take our trade on it. So out of the three of them, the NASDAQ has moved the least. Then you have the S&P, which has had a bigger sell-off today. And then you have the Dow, which has actually made a lower low. So I expect the Dow to come down in around here. And I expect to have a bigger sell-off on the Dow than I do on the S&P and the NASDAQ. Because as a general rule, that's what happens. And if we look at the other indices across the board, if we look at the likes of the German DAX, again, we've had a pretty big sell-off. Now, the thing is with the German DAX, we are at that level. So is this a point where we expect to see the market bounce? Or would we expect this floor to be taken out? In your opinion, guys, do we expect this to drop, or do we expect this to continue going? Is this something we expect to drop even further? I'm just trying to look at our levels here and see what else is lower. So the next major level down here seems to be right there. That would be the next major level. So it would be it would mean it has to come back down into that area there for it to drop down. But do I think it'll drop further? Absolutely. But again, if we look at what's going on with COVID out there, do we think COVID news is going to get better, or do we think it's going to get worse? Because remember, guys, you've been through this already. You've been through this for a year and a half now already. Do we think we're going to get worse or better COVID news over the next 10 months? Now, in my mind, I expect probably lockdowns. I probably expect more bad news, higher what they call it, infection rate, and so on and so forth. So that's what I expect here. I expect worse conversion. I expect all that sort of stuff to happen. Okay. Now, that was on your screen. I was like, whoa, it came up with mine. But I expect all that to sort of happen. I expect all that sort of to happen. It's all so I expect this to get a little bit worse. So in that mind, I am potentially looking at sort of, if it breaks and retests here, taking a little short to the downside, because that would be a selling signal. So if we get a little break and retest on this would be something I'd be interested in potentially taking a short. Now, would it be a big time short? No, I'd be in it short-term short, but I can still. And I expect that to potentially come down into that level there. If that gives me that setup, that's something that I would be looking at on this particular asset. Now, would I do that on the US? Not as I wouldn't be as quick to do it on the US as the likes of these European stocks, because as you can see, the European stocks are sideways, whereas you can see the US stock market is going up. So it doesn't have the same momentum, which means that there is still some room for the sellers to come in and actually push this down. Okay, so there's still room for the sellers to push it down. Now, we're going to click on to the UK market as well. And if we look at the FTSE, the same thing has happened across the FTSE. So this is happening all markets bar one. There's only one market that this is not affecting. I'm going to show you that now very shortly. So we have a sell-off, and I would expect this to potentially hit this level here. I don't expect this not to hit this level. Again, I expect it to come down and eventually even break that level. Why? Because I expect a little bit of more bad news. Again, I'm going to trade what I see rather than what I think. Is I'm not taking a trade on that till it breaks to the downside here. So it breaks this level. But again, I do think there's more room to the downside on this. Now, if we look at this, the only one that hasn't really had any reaction to this is the Chinese market. So the Chinese market is the only one that hasn't really reacted to any of this news. And it's interesting that it hasn't reacted yet. But this is what's actually going on at the moment. We have a little bit of a wedge shape pattern going on there on this, and we would expect some sort of breakout on this. So would you expect, because it's already fallen way too much, I guess, I actually doubt that, Jay. I don't think for a second, if there becomes bad news over there in China, I expect a big sell-off on this as well. I expect a big sell-off on this. But again, with this pattern that's happening here, would we expect this market to bounce to the upside or bounce to the downside? What would we expect to happen on this particular one with this breakout? To the upside or downside? Okay, so some people are saying up, some people are saying down. Either way, but the idea is as a trader, we get off the fence a little bit. So if we look at the overall momentum is going down. So then the highest probability is to the downside here. So the highest probability is to the downside. So there is a little sort of a pattern here going on. And if you were looking to take this as a short, with everything that's gone on, we would look to get in at the low of that bar. So we'd look to get in at the low of that bar, and our stop loss would be above that high. So see this high? So the stop loss will be there, entry will be here. I'm looking for it to go down. Now this is 3.7% to just inside that there is 5%. So there's a 1-to-1 run on that at the minute if it breaks to the downside. But if there's an outbreak in the likes of China, the way there is in the likes of Europe and the likes of the US and across the world, if that happens and is properly reported, we expect these stocks to take a tumble as well. Okay, now how much we don't know, but again, we'd expect some sort of a drop on this as well. Now I said it affected all markets except one. And just to show you that it affected all markets except one, look, as we can see here, Bitcoin. So from the last time we did this, we actually had a play out of two scenarios. With a play out of two scenarios, it was either going to continue going up and then come back down, or it was going to hit its head and then come back down. So it slightly broke this high. You could probably class that as a double top if you want to be generous. Okay, you could class it as a double top. And look, it came the whole way back down to the exact level that we had pinpointed. Now, I'm not a mind reader, absolutely not a mind reader. But the idea is trending follows particular cycles. Now, profit, I can't guarantee that that's now going to go up and make a higher high. But the idea is this is trending, it's pulled back, and now look, we've had some buyers in here. So once it got down to this 53,000 level, you now have people going, well, this is value for money now again. We've seen a drop on this market from the high here, which was 68,000, down to a low here, and that was a drop of 23%, where you have people buying this up. You have people looking at this and saying that's now where we go shopping. Now, from the previous webinar, we talked about going shopping here, and that's exactly what we did here. So look at this horizontal level. We have the horizontal level there. And for you eagle-eyed guys, you can have a look. Look, it came down and touched that. So let's see if I got triggered in. So back here, back to this pending orders. And look, there's that trade there. I didn't get triggered in. Look, My order, it came down and hit the 53,000 level, but it didn't come down the actual spread, which is absolutely unbelievably annoying. A bit like my ADA trade here. Look, my ADA trade, it actually went down, but it didn't. I didn't get triggered in on this one. That one's there. What, it was the 4th to the 5th when I placed it. But again, this one didn't slide trigger me in, so I didn't actually get triggered in at that particular point. And you will see, look, I have an order on 31. I also have an order at 21,000. Now let's see if they hit. I don't expect these two to hit, but the orders are there in place that if it hits, I'm in the trade. So Bitcoin position didn't trigger. We predicted the move, but it just means that I haven't utilized it correctly. I haven't fully jumped in on it. Why? Because I didn't get triggered in. It didn't quite play out as precise as I wanted it. Now, obviously, I wasn't there at the particular time that happens. But again, we can see this big, huge sell-off, the same as across the other markets. The 26th. So 26th was the Friday, last Friday, and you can see there that 26th bar was across all markets except China. So there's the 26th there, 26th there, 26th, 26th, 26th. The difference with this one is this is closed on the weekend, whereas Bitcoin is not, so that's why they have 2 extra bars. Okay, that's the only difference. So people say to me that cryptocurrency and trading is quite hard. It's not hard. Just set yourself up. Now, as we saw, I set myself up here and I still didn't get triggered in. I still didn't get triggered in because my order was off by fractions. Look, off by fractions. But sometimes you win some, you lose some. But again, without doing a bit of analysis, without doing a little bit of effort, you don't actually see these things. So let's have a look at the other ones. Now, again, we talked about this coming back down into this area. So we talked about this coming back down into this area, and that's exactly what happens here. So we wanted this to come back, hit this floor. Did anyone jump in when it hit that ceiling or hit that floor? So was a ceiling along here, come back, and there's the floor. Was that a point where you should be shopping? But why did you miss it? This goes up on YouTube. This is here in the chat room. We have a whole group here that's there. Forgot to place the order. Mark, you should have placed it when we were on the webinar with us. I mean, it's there. It's not like it's the thing about it is that it's not one of these things that we should forget about. Like some little things like this. A lot of you guys trade crypto. This is something that is there. Is eToro taking 80 off the portfolio? No, that's, as far as I know, that's only US eToro. That's only US clients. That's the last bit I saw. Now, this could continue dropping down to here. This could continue dropping down to here. And as you saw, I also had an order here for here. Okay, so and if it comes back down to there, I will take another position. I also have the order there. So make sure you're setting yourself up, because when these cryptos drop, they drop massively. They drop very, very quickly. And yes, crypto is the wild, wild west at the minute. And we don't know what ones are We don't know what ones are running, what ones are not going to run. We have to get a little bit lucky and stuff with things. XRP. But sometimes if you don't set yourself up for success, how do you ever expect it to avail of it? Because remember, most people have day jobs. Most people are doing stuff during the day, between kids, between working. You have stuff to do. So what you should be doing is placing orders in beforehand, that if it hits this area. Now, like I say, not all of them will get triggered in. Some of them won't. Some of them will continue and you just miss the boat. But the idea is, by placing and looking at the market, you can see, by using a little bit of structure, you can see that it has come down to those areas. So this one here, so XRP has come down. Look, it's double bottomed. And from that double bottom has a little poke to the upside. Now, the problem with the likes of this here is that we have a ceiling on this. So we have a ceiling at that point. So we have a ceiling. So it's hit this once, twice, 3 times in the last year. So if it hits that area, I would expect this to actually drop again. I'd expect this to drop. Now, eventually it will break it. Eventually it will break it at some point. But again, at what point? At what point are we looking for it to break? The market needs to have a nice run for that to run. I have no idea. I've never seen this before. Well, I actually have, because there's the horizontal line on it. No, absolutely nothing about it. And it is just one of these that is running at the present moment. In all honesty, would need that to come back into sort of that area there before I'll be looking to invest in that at all. I wouldn't be jumping in this at the minute. If you jumped in on this and jumped in on it, you are basically jumping in on hype. You are basically jumping in on hype. Again, you can drop down onto the smaller time frames. You can drop down onto the smaller time frames. You can see here that this is trending quite nicely in the smaller time frames. Look, trending quite nicely. So if you're someone who likes to trade crypto, there is a potential bounce or a buy at this particular point here, and we'd be looking to jump out when it hits sort of this level up here. But again, it wouldn't be something that I would do. So Mana is #1 metaverse. I don't think it'll drop to 1.5, but we'll see. We'll absolutely see. It's trending quite nicely on this smaller market, on this smaller time frame. But we still have to have a bigger plan as well. So there's a smaller plan. So we're trading this, but for a bigger plan, we need a phase 2. We can't really jump in this here because it's overextended. It's overvalued at the minute. We need some sort of proper pullback and then go. So the example there would be ADA. So look how ADA similarly took this massive run up and then it come back. And that's what we're looking for. And then hopefully it then takes off again. But that's the idea. That's what we're looking for. We're never looking to jump in on these crypto or stocks or anything when they're at record highs like this. We need some sort of decent pullback. Now at the minute, since the beginning of November, we've had a really good run on this. We've had a really, really good run on this. But again, it's something that we for me as a trader or an investor, under no circumstance would be getting in here. As a trader, potentially on the smaller time frames. Potentially on the smaller time frames, I'm seeing a pattern. One of the things is that's had a lower high. But if we look at this one, this also had a lower high here. It also had a lower high here. And each time it's had that lower high, it broke it. Lower high, broke it. lower high. Let's see if it breaks that one. There's a couple of different ways of trading that. And if you were looking to trade that, I understand that you, with eToro, you can only trade it as an underlying asset. But again, not everyone trades, not everyone trades as an underlying asset. So the idea would be is your entry will be there, but your stop loss would have to go below that. Your stop loss would have to go below that low. You're looking to trade that then to the upside. Okay. And that'd be something that I'd be sort of looking to trade with you guys. That'd be something that it'd be something that you guys should be looking to trade if it meets a certain criteria. And this one here is a potential trade, but on the daily and the higher time frame, as an investor or someone who this is massively overextended. So is it a high probability? No. Someone said that Mana has a huge spread in eToro. Look, everyone has a huge spread in eToro. eToro has on the crypto, there's huge spreads in everyone's cryptos. It's just a matter of where you want to keep your money. It's just a matter of where you buy it. There's loads of places to buy crypto. So if you also Tron. So again, Tron was something similar to ADA, had a massive spike, and then it's been pretty flat this year again. There's also a horizontal level that if it comes back to this horizontal level, we would look to jump in there. Okay, if it comes back down to this area. Do I have my own private keys to it in eToro? No, I don't, unfortunately. Solana. I think that's the first time I've pronounced the name correctly, isn't it? And we actually extended that level up there. We have that extended up there, and it's coming along nicely. Did anyone reinvest when that came back into that area? Did anyone reinvest? Yeah, the problem is with pending orders is sometimes they don't trigger. Because if you had a pending order at this particular point at the 175, you wouldn't have got triggered in. You wouldn't have got triggered in at all. Okay, so wouldn't have triggered you in if you had got in at that particular point. You would have been. It wouldn't have actually triggered you in. So whereas the trend line here, it came down, hit the trend line, and then bounced off it. But again, it depends on what type of trader you are. Whether you're someone who is, it depends on what type of trader you're. Someone who's working off a horizontal or a trend line. Depends on what type of trader. Dot, Polkadot. So Polkadot. So again, Polkadot's had a really nice pullback. So if we have a look at this horizontal, we have a look at this horizontal, add a bit of thickness to it. We have sort of a level there through sort of that area. But again, obviously there's smaller levels up higher. There is smaller levels up higher. And Would I have traded off that one? Probably not. I can't. I don't think I would have. I don't think I would have. I wouldn't have placed that trade there. It's not something I would have taken at that particular point. So if we had this pullback, you have a nice price action bar at this point, but I wouldn't have invested at this particular point. The level wasn't strong enough for me. For me, would have had to come back to the 25, the 25.9, so 26,000, and would have had my entry slightly above that there. So for me, it's not something that I would have actually taken from that. So back. Anyone got any other questions on? Has anyone got any other questions on crypto before we move back over to stocks or commodities? Before we move away from crypto, Dogecoin. Again, it's running along at the moment, and if it comes back down to there, we're looking to buy up another little bit at that particular point. Again, it's pretty flat, pretty sideways. Sort of want Elon Musk to tweet again. So anyone who has an inside track on Elon, can you get him to give us a little? Can you get him to give us a little shout out and drive it up again? But at this particular point, if it comes back down to this area, we will have a look at that. We look to purchase it. But at that particular point, we have to wait for that to happen before that happens, where that goes. Tezos. So that level there was broken, and we have one there. Look, bounce, 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 bounce. And it's come back down and then double bottom. Has anyone taken a trade there on that? Has anyone taken one of those trades? Now, again, are we looking at this as a way of trading? No, we're looking at this to invest. We're looking at this as a way of investing into the market. We're looking to scale into our position. Okay, so it's not something we're looking to trade on. It's something that we're looking to invest in. So once we come back down, we're looking to take another position in the market. We're looking to scale into it. And then when the market takes off, then we go again. And that's the idea. Okay. Okay, so this is the last one before we move on back to stocks. So we wanted a break and retest at that particular point. Only we haven't had one. It sort of broke and then moved sideways. So for me, this is not really something I'm sort of looking at the minute. Some of the other ones are a much better structure, much better setup at the moment than here. But so it has to come back down to this area for us to. So if it pulls back there, that's where we're looking to trade. And if it pulls back there, then we come back. So the idea for me is I'm looking to stay away from this one. It's not something, if you're looking at the structure here, again, you might see something out there, or you might get some fundamental news that this is going to be incorporated into something, or there may be some sort of, it may be something that there's someone tweets something and this takes off. But as the structure here, with the structure here, it doesn't give us any indication that this is going to take off here. So whereas some of the other ones, there's much better structure. It's back at a level. It's a point where people are looking to invest. So for this particular one, maybe back down to there or there before people would look to potentially invest in this again. So as a sort of a thing, I had 2 trades running. We had Nike running, and I had Nike running as a CFD, and I had also Oracle. So they were the 2 trades that I took. Now, at this particular point, we entered in a long position. Entry was there. And I think our stop loss was somewhere around there. Our take profit. So that is 2.5% or 2.3, somewhere around there. Okay, so we'll just move that out of the way. Now we can see a couple little things here that's happening. Is one, that we had a pretty big sell-off here. We had a gap to the downside because of the markets on Friday. Okay, because of what's with the likes of coronavirus, with the likes of the extra lockdowns, with people unsure about the market, the direction, stuff like that there. So what I did on Monday is when the market opens up, I jumped out of this market. Now, so I actually jumped out when it was at the low down here. Okay, so at the low of sort of that green bar, I jumped out, which meant instead of taking 100 quid loss, I jumped out at, I think it was something like 20 quid down. Why? Because the structure of this market is still fine. I'm still happy with the structure, but what has changed? What has changed in the landscape of what we're trying to do here? What has changed? What do you think has changed? Okay, absolutely. COVID has changed that. So now I'm looking at the psychology of trading. I'm looking at what people are thinking. I'm trying to understand that with the mentality of what's going on, is my stop loss safe now? So is that safe? And my answer to that was no. So normally I wouldn't jump into a trade. I wouldn't jump out of a trade. But this has now changed a little bit. The landscape have changed. What's going on in the market has changed. The understanding have changed. Now, yes, what happened is the bar went up. The bar went up and buyers jumped in. And if I had held on to that trade, I probably would have been 20 quid up. We then had a gap down again. So a gap down. And then today, by the close of business yesterday, you would have been slightly down. You probably would have been 10 quid down. And now look, the pre-market is now down at 168.48. So it means now we are 50 quid down of now. So the idea is I've closed this trade. So I've closed this trade. Why? Because the landscape has changed. The technical analysis is still there. Technical analysis is still the same. But what's after happened is the psychology of traders, what's going on in the market movement has changed. So am I happy to have a CFD trade running at that particular time with what's going on? No. Do I expect to be our stop loss to be triggered in this one? Absolutely. So I close that trade. And if we have a look at Oracle, so Oracle is similar. We look at Oracle here again. Same happened with Oracle. Okay, jumped in on Oracle, and I actually think would have been stopped out on Oracle. I think we gave Oracle a little bit bigger of a stop loss, if I'm not mistaken. Horizontal. So if we go to the Discord channel here, have a look at this, Henry's trades. Henry's trades. I've closed that trade. I've closed the updating. So I'll let you guys know. Let's see. Here's Oracle. So it depended on where. So our stop loss was 90.98. Let me see, 90.98. So slightly there, but 93. So would have been very, very close to being stopped out here. And then the market turned around and you went back into a little bit of profit. But again, I close this one again with a little bit of about 20 quid loss. I think it was about 25 or 30 quid on this one. So the idea is to get out of the market, limit my downside. Do I expect this to be stopped out? Yes, again. Why? Because the market now has changed. It's don't be afraid to pull the trigger on something once something like this happens, because this is not an everyday occurrence. This is not what's going on in the market. It's not an everyday occurrence. Now, as a general rule, I'll tell you not to close your trade, not to close it early. But that's been through technical analysis. So technical analysis is the reason. Jumaya, should I close it now? Let's have a look. Let's have a look. But the problem with Jumaya is that it depends on how far you are down on Jumaya. Depends on how far you're down on Jumaya. Where do you see this? Where do you see this going? Is this going now down to sort of this level down here? Would I be in favor of closing the trade? No, I would potentially gear the trade. I would potentially gear on that particular trade rather than closing. I'd potentially gear on it. Okay, and if you want to know what gearing is, I did it last Wednesday on my webinar. So make sure you watch last Wednesday's webinar. And I talked about Jumaya in a little bit of detail as well. So I talked about this breakout of this particular trend here. So we have this going on. Look, we actually have a descending triangle. We have a breakout to the downside, where the overall momentum is going down, and you could have actually geared on a position at that time. So that's the difference. Yeah, similarly on Disney, similar on Roku. Don't know, I haven't looked at them, but that was something we could have done to prevent any more downside on the likes of Jumaya or any of your downward stocks. Is Jumaya going down only because of this news? No. Okay, and that's something that we've sort of looking at. Well done, Catty. So Catty's all our stocks, underlying assets are down, but all our cryptos are green. Well done. If we can now turn your stocks a little bit green, it'd be perfect. eToro doesn't allow selling positions on Jumaya. Well, then, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot you can do then on that one. You just have to just continue buy on the upside, unfortunately. The problem with the likes of these is that there's not enough liquidity on one side, which means then they then pulled the leverage on one of the sides. Okay, and that's literally to mitigate their risk. That's the idea behind it. But there are loads of other stocks there you can actually do that on. But again, that's something that we could have done. It was breaking out nicely. There was a nice little trend on it. But don't be afraid to look at the stocks that you have at the minute, or even the crypto that you have at the minute. And if you see it trending like this, you see a sort of a wedge-shaped pattern, or a descending triangle, or an ascending triangle, that we trade the likes of those. They are pretty strong signals, buy and sell signals at a particular time. Okay, so they give us entries, they give us exits, they tell us where this market is expected to go. Okay, so that's something we sort of need to know and keep a look on, keep an eye on. But again, we can sort of hedge. We can sort of hedge. Now, the probably the best sort of hedges out there is the likes of gold versus US dollar. Someone mentioned gold earlier on, and it's only sort of come into my head now. But we can see gold is up 0.5%. But would we be looking to trade gold at the moment? With what's going on there, would we be looking to trade gold long or short at the minute? The answer is absolutely not no. It's in no man's land. Literally in territory where we do not want to be involved. It's at a point where we are literally stay away from it. Now, if it comes back down into this area, then there's a potential trade. If it comes back down into this area here, the 1758 level, look, it's bounced once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, potential a 6th time. But that's but it has to come back down that level for it to happen. Where it is now, no, it's pretty much no man's land. We have a couple of little touches through here, but it's not strong enough for me to say that that's an area where we're looking to buy it. So I would expect this to, well, I say expected, for me to trade this has to continue coming down. That has to come down from there to there for me to be looking to trade that. Whereas if we're looking to hedge, if we think that the markets are going to continue to drop and we want to hedge, we would use the likes of gold to hedge against the likes of US dollar. So we can actually hedge. So if you are looking and you have the stock market, so at the minute, if you're over in tech and you're looking to see the tech is continuing to drop, you pull up the NASDAQ. You pull up the NASDAQ and you short the NASDAQ. Trade, you press the sell button. Right, we're selling the NASDAQ and we're trading short. And this will be hedging. This will be hedging your trade against your underlying assets. Now, is it a setup here? Well, potentially. It is a potential setup, actually. It'll be more so on the smaller time frames. We look at this. We have a head and shoulders pattern there. A drop down now to the 4 hour. You probably see it better. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, double top to the downside. And this would be a natural hedge against your tech heavy stocks that you already have in your portfolio. So when that popped up like that, we actually take a short position And if the short position loses, you lose 100 quid. But if it goes well for you, you start making money that your stocks are losing. So you're trying to cover the movement to the downside. That's all. And that's what hedging is. Natural gas. Let's have a quick look. So I know today has been a little bit different. We've sort of done a market overview this time. Done a little bit of a market overview rather than work on specific topics, but it's sort of an idea. Okay, so this is now sort of done exactly what oil has done, which I expected. I know we done the webinar here on Sunday night, which I said that was to me clearly unbelievable. I wasn't expecting that. I expected this to continue dropping. Why? Because oil had dropped. So now it's correlating again, because generally when oil drops, gas drops. When oil goes up, gas goes up. So as a general rule, they sort of mirror each other a little bit. So is this something we could potentially trade? Yes, we could actually trade this if we got a little setup like this. So that popped up there. We could potentially take that to the downside. Bounce, bounce, bounce. So a break and then retest. So if a retest, we can actually take that to the short side. Now we look at oil. And oil, it's going to move all these out of the way. But oil, we will look at this. We have a phase 1, phase 2, phase 1, phase 2 to the downside. It was actually a pretty good break and retest there. Bounce, hit its head once, come up, hit its head twice, and look, really nice short on that. There are a couple of levels. There's one here at this particular point through there, which it's sitting on right now. So look, we have a pretty decent level there to that at the $67 mark. And we're now hitting it. So do we expect oil to turn around now at that level, or do we expect it to continue going? At that particular point, would you expect it to continue going, or would you expect it to turn around? So most people are saying for it to go down. Absolutely, I would expect this to continue going lower. But whether we'll get a bounce to the upside and then continue, I don't know. But I would expect this to continue going lower. Yes, there is a level there. Absolutely, we are at a level, but I would expect this to continue going. I don't see any reason for this to stop. Someone said there with the COVID restrictions, flights being cancelled, so on and so forth. That means less people are traveling, commuting into work, which means remember oil is biggest user of oil is roads. Okay. So again, we expect a little bit, we expect this to continue going. And in my opinion. Look, everyone, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for jumping in on the webinar. Thank you very much for listening to me for the last hour. Hope you all have a lovely evening, and anyone who wants to jump in on any of my webinars or anything like that, go to henry-ward.co.uk or click on subscribe on YouTube. Thanks, everyone. Hope you have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.